Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Off the Water. I am your host, Darth Yacker. Joining me tonight is my co-host, the intern, Tyler Caldwell. Also joining us tonight is Hobie Pro staff member and local fishing expert, Devon Beltz. Devon, thanks for agreeing to come on the show tonight.
No problem.
So, guys, we got a great... You're welcome, man. We have a great show lined up for tonight as we will focus on almost exclusively on fishing for Sacalait. Devon is going to share the ins and outs of fishing for these elusive slabs and why Sacalait fishing is just getting ready to heat up. A few housekeeping matters before we get started. We are pleased to announce that Off the Water is now available on Apple Podcast as well as Google Podcast. It was approved as of today. So if you missed part of the show or just want to catch a recap while you're on the road, feel free to get on and listen to it while you're driving. Also, a reminder that registration for Trout Challenge is now open. We have 28 anglers currently registered for this event. It's actually a pretty good start as the tournament's about 3 weeks away, and normally everyone waits till about the week or so of the tournament to register. But, we're hoping to get 50, 60 anglers for that tournament. It's going to be a good time. Another reminder that our year-long Massey's Fish Picks tournament is coming to an end. February 28th is the last day to submit your catches for the year. As a matter of fact, there were some pictures on Facebook today. Brock Miller, representative from Backpacker that was on last week, actually landed a nice, it was almost close to 21-inch trout that he was able to submit, shaking up the leaderboard a little bit. This is a great event that Massey's has put on for the club, with brand new kayaks being given away to the top finishers. Also, an announcement, we've already got next week's show lined up. Keith Green with the Inshore Fishing Association Kayak Division will be on to discuss the IFA tournaments and formats, as well as the upcoming IFA tournament here in Louisiana. This is a catch and release format here. I think it's going to be a bull red and a trout, and I believe the weigh-ins in Lafitte. It's actually scheduled for the Sunday before our Trout Challenge tournament. So Keith's going to be on. He's going to talk about the format, a little bit about the IFA. I believe the championship for the IFA is also this year. As I understand, I think it's in Grand Isle, but we'll be able to confirm that with Keith again. And so this will be a great opportunity. If you've heard about it and we're a little intimidated about fishing it or just had questions about it, this will be a great opportunity for you to come on, ask questions, kind of learn the ins and outs of the IFA kayak tour. I know we have a lot of members in our group that fish it, and they have some pretty good prizes and cash payouts in those tournaments. All right, so I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to get on this. I've been looking forward to this episode since we were able to get it arranged last week. I know Tyler has as well, and Devon was good enough to come on. He came highly recommended by some of the best fishermen I know in the area. So, Devon, again, thanks for coming on and spending some time with us tonight. So tell us a little bit. Where were you born, Devon?
I was born and raised in Luling, Louisiana. Still currently reside here. I grew up fishing the bayous of Bayou and Lake des Allemands. Des Allemands is actually Cajun French for the Germans. It was a German settlement here in the early 18th century, and my last name is Beltz. So there's a little bit of history there. It's German as well. My wife, we've been married for about 10 years now. We started a family a couple of years ago. Got a little 22-month-old little boy and one more on the way. So she's due same birthday as my son, April 5th, coming up soon.
Oh, congratulations. So April 5th, that's that's I think a day before our tournament and a month before Paddlepalooza. So we hope you can still make it, but certainly we'll understand if you can't make it. I think we've had some babies being born in the club recently, and they certainly take away from the fishing, but boy, they're a lot of fun. So congratulations on that. We hope it all goes well for you. So now when you're not fishing, this can be a very expensive habit, even for us kayakers. So what do you do to help support that habit? I do work for a living. I fish on the side. I'm a nurse anesthetist in the New Orleans area. I work at 3 different facilities. So you help put people to sleep?
Yeah. I do a lot of orthopedic procedures at Baptist Hospital in New Orleans, and then I do a lot of epidural C-sections for laboring patients at Lakeside Tulane.
So is your wife going to let you do the her epidural?
No, you generally try to stay away from doing families anesthesia. It's just one of those golden rules in our industry there. But we'll have some recommendations and get the best.
Well, that sounds good. That sounds good. So now, Devon, how'd you get into fishing?
A good friend of mine, he was a house supervisor when I was a tech at St. Charles Parish Hospital, Ron Chestnut. He started with the club the first year. The second year, he said, "Hey, you want to come fishing with me? They're doing this minimalist challenge." I said, "Sure, I'll follow you out there, see what it's about." They gave everybody 5 or 6 jig heads and a couple of baits, and said, "Hey, this is pretty cool. I think I'll join the club." And I knew I was going back to school to do something a little different, but I said I'll try to fish when I can, and the rest was kind of history. Just kept at it. He let me borrow a little ocean kayak prowler. I signed up for CCA Star the next year. Went to Caminata Pass, threw out some live bait, and ended up catching like a 4.5 pound trout and won a Hobie.
Wow!
So once I found the pedal drives, I said, "Okay, this is the way to do it," and stuck with it ever since.
You've been fishing all your life, though.
Yeah. Growing up in Des Allemands, I started fishing off the bank, and then when I could borrow a P-Rog or a little flatboat, I'd put that in and just kind of beat the banks and the bridges in that area, and kind of learn what works, what doesn't work, and kind of went from there.
I go to a lot of restaurants and I see Des Allemands catfish. Are their catfish better than the rest of the state?
I think one of the things that makes it so good is that the fisheries underneath that bridge for catfish, they're a lot smaller. Over the years, so many people have fished them that those small catfish have less and less of a bloodline. So you get a lot cleaner of a white meat, and I think that's why a lot of those places like Middendorf's and those places do really well, because it's very thin, clean, crispy catfish.
I've got the same philosophy with trout. That's why I try to catch the small trout and don't focus so much on the big ones. So if you ever see me come in with a bag of small trout, that was certainly intentional. So, I know you've been a member of BC Bayou Coast Kayak Fishing Club. I've been with the club for a number of years now, and I know you've actually won some pretty good tournaments with the club. I think you won Minimalist Challenge 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, 2017.
And
I think Brendan and Steve were up there last year. So, yeah, it was the year before, 2017.
Right. And I think you've also, was it Fallen Tide that you won last year?
Yeah, it was Fallen Tide champ for 2018.
Now, last year, were you fishing at Bayou Log Cabins with everybody else? I think we had half the tournament was fishing out of there last year.
I've fished there a few times. I could have been fishing there. I've also fished in Port Sulphur and Venice. So, I've been around down there.
I understand. We're just seeing if you're going to slip up a little bit.
2 years ago, I remember in 2017, I crossed paths with Devon, and he was jigging for flounder. So I just wonder if maybe that's where he caught his flounder at last year. I'm not sure.
And where was that at, Tyler?
We'll talk off the air on that.
Okay, off the air. That's good. That's good. All right. So you're a member of the Hobie Pro staff. So you got to have a Hobie, right?
I have a Hobie Outback 2019, camo color.
How do you like it?
I like it a lot, man. It's a lot faster than the previous year models. Last year I invested in a couple of GoPros. I've been hoping to make a few more videos here, and I got all the RAMs set up for everything. And then this year they came out with the H rails, which are built into the Outback. Yeah. And so half of the stuff that I bought I actually don't need, but it works out great. It's very easy and convenient. Definitely like that about it. And the fact that we got square hatches in all of them now. So a lot of big improvements, a lot of upgrades there.
They are. I absolutely love that the 2019. I find that the drive and the pedals and the bars actually seem to be a little bit sturdier than the ones in the past. They don't tend to bend as much. and they seem to be a little bit sturdier. So I know you do a lot of saltwater fishing. You also do a lot of freshwater fishing. Do you consider yourself a freshwater guy that does a little bit of saltwater, or a saltwater guy that does a little bit of freshwater?
If I had to say one or the other, I'd probably say my roots are more in freshwater fishing. And then, over the years, I've really enjoyed catching big trout. So, I kind of got away from freshwater fishing for a little while, but I always come back to the freshwater fishing just for the, the peacefulness of it, the scenery, and I really enjoy using those ultralight, setups with 6-pound test and letting those panfish take a little drag.
It's nice to have a little bit shorter drive every now and then too. I know at least for me over in Albany, going to the coast is easy, 2 hours round trip. So hitting a little freshwater every now and then makes it you don't spend your whole day fishing. It's easy to go out, make a quick morning trip, and come back in and spend time with the family.
For sure.
I'm sure it's easier to probably on windier days too to kind of tuck away somewhere in some of these smaller rivers and stuff, huh?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of areas, just like when you look at launches, let's talk about, Highway 1, there's probably 6 or 7 launches in that corridor, but a lot of people just launch off the side of the road and kind of get, into some areas that aren't frequented as much. You can do the same thing with freshwater fishing. You can duck in off of these little small bridges. That's the beauty about kayak fishing for freshwater too, is you can launch in some places that boaters might not be able to get to.
Yeah,
untouched territory, so to speak.
Absolutely. And well, let's get to it. Let's talk Sacalait fishing. I'm going to make a confession here. I can talk about a lot of different things. I can talk about a lot of different saltwater. I've been fishing saltwater most of my life. Not as skilled as a lot of the anglers in this club, but I can at least hold a conversation. When it comes to Sacalait, I'm going to plead complete ignorance. I couldn't tell a Sacalait from a brim. Tyler had to remind me before the show started that in some parts of the country they're called Crappie. I thought they were 2 different fish. So we're going to be really relying on you to bring us up to speed on Sacalait fishing form, rigging, and everything. I know it's the talk this time of year. It really starts focusing around Sacalait. We'll talk about that a little bit, but tell us a little bit about what a Sacalait is. I mean, I've gotten some pictures now, and I'm sure Tyler's going to share them on here. But what exactly is a Sacalait?
A Sacalait is a freshwater fish that's in the panfish family, in the sunfish family. There are wildlife and fisheries recognizes 2 different types. There's a black crappie, and I think Tyler's got a couple of slides he's going to post up here on the stream. But a black crappie, best way to differentiate between a white is that black crappie has its speckled patterns all throughout the length of the fish. It's kind of a black and white checkered pattern, whereas a white crappie has that pigmentation in vertical lines. So you'll get this black vertical line, white vertical line, black. That's probably the easiest way to tell the difference between the 2. And you go up north and you tell these guys, "Hey, I'm catching Sacalait," and they're like, "What in the world is that?" The Sacalait name comes from the Choctaw Indians that were in this area. They called them Sacalait, which is Sakli, and that was generic for trout. And then when the Cajun French came here and they tried it, they said, "Hey, this is a really tasty fish." I think those Indians are saying Sacalait, which is Cajun French for sack of milk. And they said it's really good table fare. So that's where the name Sacalait comes from, and that's why it's mainly used in the south as opposed to the north. And there's a creel limit on the fish. It's 50 per person per day. So that's a lot of numbers you can have.
Let me go back. Did you say 50?
50.
50
per day.
50 Sacalait per day, per person.
Per person. Yeah,
okay.
Not per boat. And there's no size limit. There are some areas in the state like Toledo Bend, Caddo, Poverty Point, I think Eagle Lake. Some of the restrictions there, I think the size limit changes. The number that you can have changes a little bit, but for the majority of the state, it's 50 per person per day.
Okay, now, generally speaking, about what size is a keeper Sacalait to you? I mean, do you keep every one that you catch? I mean, if they're big enough to eat a bait, you're going to keep them, or is it, generally if they're under so many inches, I'm going to throw them back?
For my wife and I normally will do fillets, and I won't fillet a Sacalait under 10 inches. I think that's a really good size to be able to fillet. My mom and her family consider that sacrilege. If you're filleting a Sacalait, they want the head cut off, they want it scaled, they want the guts taken out, and they want it fried in cornmeal. And they'll take them 7 or 8 inches, and that's their favorite way to eat them. So it really depends on how you want to do it.
I gotcha. And so, at that point, I guess you're frying them whole at that point with the bones and everything.
Correct.
And I know some people, it seems to be a little bit of the older generation, they love to eat the whole fried fish. I know growing up, it seemed that was a lot of it. I prefer not to pick through the bones, but a lot of people swear by it and gives it a lot of flavor.
Yeah, something about something about that whole fried fish kind of turns me off. I don't know. I'm a little picky though, so I think I'm going for 10 inches or bigger on the fillets.
Tyler, I think you'd be happy catching a 6-inch Sacalait.
Yeah, you're right.
I'd be happy if I could recognize one. Now, listen, with the Sacalait, you mentioned there's black and white. Are both of those species in Louisiana?
Yeah, most of the white Sacalait are generally caught deeper in 15 to 20 foot of water. They will come up shallow to spawn, but pretty much year round, your white Sacalait are going to hang out deeper. And most of the ones that you catch in these shallower back marshes and canals, they're generally black Sacalait.
Okay. So, fishing saltwater, we've got 2 times a year that everybody looks forward to, really, spring, for the trout. They start moving down toward the beaches and everything. And then again in the fall, when the trout start coming in, and the redfish and things start cooling down. I think that's, generally speaking, everybody's 2 favorite times a year. But right now we're in February, which generally speaking is, one of the worst times a year to fish, in my opinion. But I'm hearing everything Sacalait. Why is Sacalait suddenly coming up as the go-to fish for February?
So in February, these fish are going to be driven by water temperatures to move up in back canals and spawn. So they're generally coming from their wintering holes, which are deeper spots, and they're moving up into those canal systems that are generally man-made, that are maybe 8-10 foot deep. And as we get those temperatures between 55 and 65 degree water temps, those fish start moving up into what we call the pre-spawn, where the male's getting that 7 to 8 foot of water. And then as we get towards 60, 62 degree water temp, they'll kind of move up into the shallows and start talking about making beds. The males are the ones that do all the work. They fan the beds. I think Tyler's got a couple of pictures of that, some beds that we found Saturday. And you can see the best way to be able to find a bed is to look for that red clay color where they fanned all that aquatic grass out. And you'll just see kind of this reddish tint on the water. So that's kind of the whole thing.
Tyler, do you have the picture up of the spawn right now?
Yeah, I have it up. So.
And so, Devon, if you could tell us exactly what we're looking at in that picture. I know it's a little unclear, but once you kind of explain it, it makes sense.
So again, the males are coming up to make those beds for the females to be able to move up during the full moons, which is there's actually a full moon tonight. So those beds were probably made a week and a half ago, and there's females that are just waiting for the right time to move up and lay their eggs. But in that picture, you're seeing that red tint, and they're looking for that hard bottom where the males will just sweep their tails and pick up all of that mud and sediment off the bottom, and just have a very hard area for the female Sacalait to lay the eggs on.
So what
makes
Go ahead.
What makes this time of the year special, I think, like you were saying, what makes February, the Sacalait month is, yes, they're spawning, but they become really aggressive. So whereas other times of the year, they're very, very finicky fish, right now they're aggressive in protecting those nests and making sure that everything stays out of there. they can.
So actually, when they see these baits coming in out of artificial or something, they could interpret that as being a type of predator coming in to try to get to the eggs, and so they attack it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole thing of it. They're basically wanting to get rid of that bait, and you're sitting there actively trying to fish a bed and pull them out of it.
Yeah, and so that picture that Tyler put on there earlier, that's essentially that orange spot in the middle. That's where the males have come in and kind of cleared the area, so to speak, and made a nesting area for the females to come in and lay the eggs.
Right.
Okay, and that's something you can see as you're paddling through. The water's clear enough. You've got polarized glasses, and that's something that you're able to see in the kayak as you're going through these areas.
Yeah, so I'm not riding around specifically looking for those spots, but like Saturday, I was kind of hitting the banks, pulling a few Sacalait here and there, and when I actually saw that bed, I saw a couple of Sacalait spook off of it. I left it for about 15 minutes. I made a U-turn, came back around, hit it again, and I pulled 4 males and a pretty big female off of that one bed.
Okay. Now, they usually spawn come around March or so. Is that right?
So the spawn, again, a lot of people say that water temp between 55 and 65, and most of the females are spawning right around the full moon, which is tonight, March 19th, April 19th. But it's not just, that's kind of textbook that it happens 3 days before the full moon, 3 days after the full moon. I think a lot of times you'll have maybe half of them that are doing it textbook, and then the rest of them, they'll kind of just for the next month or so move in and off of those beds.
So the temperature, if you have an abnormally warm February, it could move the spawn up a little bit, depending on
definitely. If we have a couple of nights, I like to watch the night temperatures. So if we have a couple of nights in upper 50s, low 60s, that's when I really think about, okay, let's load up the Sacalait gear and get out there and looking for beds.
Absolutely. So we know February, March is about the time they really start heating up. Is this a fish that you can fish for year round?
You can, but the tactics change a lot. I think it's a lot of fun fishing them right now just because they aren't as finicky. You can get up shallow with them and catch them in shallow water. So there's a little more action to see. When you fish in wintertime, it's a lot of deep dropping with sliding corks, that type of fishing.
Okay. So during the spawn, what are the fish generally feeding on at this time? Is it a certain type of bait in the area, or?
Sacalait predominantly feed on grass shrimp and shiners. There's black spot shiners that are wild in Louisiana. A lot of the bait shops will sell golden shiners. Tyler has a picture of the grass shrimp net that I like to use. And what I do when I'm catching grass shrimp is I'll go underneath water hyacinth and basically take the roots of that plant. I'll shake that net underneath it and see what I have in the net when I'm done. And you'll find these little grass shrimp that are probably no bigger than half an inch. And that's great to tip your little mini jig, tube jigs with because Sacalait are used to feed on those. They're used to the scent. There's kind of 2 ways that guys keep those fresh. One is putting them in a little bit of water, like a little water bottle. Some other guys also put them in cornmeal. The cornmeal will kill them. But the good thing about the cornmeal is that it's keeping them from turning a white or pink color. So it keeps that natural translucent color, which for some reason, when they get hot and they start turning pink, Sacalait won't hit them anymore.
Excuse me. So I don't have to keep them in an aerator or anything.
No, you don't have to. If you do notice that you have them in a little small 12 or 20 ounce water bottle and you notice that they are dying, if you have warmer air temps, you don't want to let them turn pink. So you can have a little Ziploc of cornmeal with you and just toss them in there.
I don't have to worry about hooking them between the brains or anything in the head?
No, they're so small, man, with those little jig heads. They're pretty much dead as soon as you hook them. There's no real technique to it.
Okay. So, Tyler and I were talking about this. I'm ready to go do a Sacalait trip, but I have no gear for Sacalait fishing. So I kind of want to just go through the basics with you. What do I need to start out? Let's go rod and reel. What do I, like a Zebco? What do I need here?
Nothing expensive. You can make this pretty simple. Yeah, Zebco makes a Crappie combo. Quantum makes one. I have a couple of Quantums. Ultra light, light, medium light, any size. Really, I'll say what you're comfortable with. I do have some medium lights. I also have ultra lights. I would say a reel in the 500 to 1,000 series, somewhere in there. Most of these combos cost you about $25 if you go to Academy or Walmart. So it doesn't have to be a very pricey venture to get into.
Okay.
So I went this past weekend, and I was kind of trying to gear up, and I've never shopped for an ultralight setup before, and I noticed that a lot of the ultralight rods were really short. It seems short compared to what I'm used to using, and I don't know if that is what kind of rod length are you talking about here? Does it matter? I mean, I guess the ones I saw mostly were like 5'6" to 6 foot long.
Yeah, so I would say, that's pretty accurate with ultralights. I even have some flugers that are like 4'6". They're a little harder to cast, but it's all in what you're looking for. I generally I would prefer my 5.5s. If I'm going to troll some crankbaits and have it be like a really good all-around ultralight rod, more in that 6 foot range is something that I would pick. But it's good to have a couple in different sizes because, when you're fighting them on that 4.6 or 5.5, it's just a little bit better of a fight with 6 pound test.
Okay. What type of line do you use? Do you use a mono, a fluoro? I can't imagine you use a braid, but you never know.
No, braid. A lot of people call these fish paper mouths, and braid doesn't really have the give to allow you to get these fish in without them tearing off. So mono has a little bit of stretch with it. 6 pound test mono is pretty much what I have spooled on all of my reels.
Okay. Now, so we've got a rod, we've got our reel, we've got some line here. Let's talk about the baits. We talked a little bit earlier about the live bait that you use, the grass shrimp and the shiners. Real quick, are those items that you can pick up at like these bait shops that you frequently see around a lot of these launches?
Half of the bait shops now, because of the farm raising of golden shiners, now they're pretty consistent in having shiners. Grass shrimp, you're not really going to find that in a bait shop. That's something you're going to have to, if you want to do it, invest in a $20 net and go out there and catch them yourself.
Okay. So then let's talk about the artificial baits. You can also use artificial baits, obviously, when you're fishing for Sacalait, correct?
You can. The tube jigs come in pretty much every color combination you could think of. Some tried and true colors are blue and white, black and chartreuse. There's one that's kind of nationally known now. It's won a lot of tournaments. Bobby Garland makes it. It's called Monkey Milk. It's a really good translucent pepper flake looking bait. These fish also feed on bloodworms during the summer. Bloodworms are red, so anything with red and silver flake, anything in that color category works really well as well.
So is this under a cork or primarily, or how are you rigging them?
So when I'm doing cast and retrieve methods, I'm generally using a clip-on cork, about 12 to 36 inches, with a tube jig underneath. Southern Pro Jig Heads is one of the few jig heads around us that makes a painted jig head. And during the spawn, if you have a brightly colored painted jig head, they tend to be a little more aggressive on those. A lot of the other jig heads that I find in that 1/32 ounce, they come unpainted, and I find that I get a few less bites with those.
So Devon, I'm looking at just for our reference, we've labeled some pictures here. Slide 7. Tyler, if you could put that on the screen. Devon, that's basically a tackle tray you've got with all kinds of different baits in there. You just kind of go through some of the baits you've got in there. I don't know how to describe some of them. Some of them look like soft plastics, and some of them look like some type of hard baits.
Yeah, some crankbaits, maybe small
Crankbaits. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the top row, I have some crankbaits. Most of those are 1 to 2 inches. That's great for trolling setup. You can take those crankbaits, like you were asking about the rod lengths. More of a 6-foot rod is best for that. If you have a Hobie, you can pedal. If you have a paddle kayak, you can start getting the kayak in motion and just kind of toss that crankbait behind you, let some line out, and then continue that motion forward, get it out about 30 yards behind you. And then maybe every 10 seconds or so, just kind of stop the kayak, let that crankbait come up to the surface, let it sit for a few seconds, and then start forward motion again. That's a great way to troll for pre-spawn Sacalait that might be sitting in that mid-water column.
Okay. And then what we've got, what we're looking at here on the second row.
It's a little hard for me to see on my picture. I think a lot of that is soft plastics in the second and third row. That's a lot of the tube jigs that we were talking about in the different colors. One of them looks like it's a tomato seed. It's kind of like a pumpkin seed with a red on the bottom, black and blue. Again, all those are really, really good colors. A lot of the guys, that I know that are top Sacalait fishermen, they always say the best color is the one that they're hitting on. There are guys out there that have 4 and 5 tackle trays of Sacalait baits. The guys that I see that come back with boxes and boxes of Sacalait, they generally stick with maybe 5 or 6 colors, and that's kind of it. It's all in what you have confidence in and what you're willing to throw. I think that fourth row, I've got a couple of mini spinners and road runners. That mini spinner can be deadly in the spawn if they're being really aggressive. Tyler, one of those slides, I think it's slide 11. I've got my exact setup for the mini spinner. It's Eagle Claw, size 3 blade.
Yep, I can see that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that size 3 blade is the perfect size. If you go to an H&H brand, you have to watch because the size kind of changes. H&H brand's a size 2, but it's about the size of a dime. And if you toss that up against the bank, it doesn't matter what color you have, just kind of slow roll it back to you, give it a little twitch every now and then. That can be really deadly during the spawn just to get that reaction by.
Hey, Devon, just one question came through in the Facebook group. If you could repeat the name of the painted jig heads that you were talking about.
That brand is Southern Pro jig heads.
I think they're pictured in slide 10 and 11 there, Tyler.
Okay,
So
got them up.
I know you are good friends with the Ginger Avenger. He makes a lot of saltwater tackle with the spinner blades. Does he do any crappie stuff?
No, not that I know of. But I actually texted him before this show and mentioned it to him. He said it's actually something he's been considering adding to his lineup. So
well, maybe you can get with Devon, and Devon can kind of show him, what he's got in mind, and then we get the Ginger Avenger on it and create a new crappie baits.
Sounds like a plan to me.
That'd be a good combination there.
Yeah. For sure.
So, Devon, when I might say, I go to Puglia's a lot because it's close to my house and they've got a really good selection of baits over there. Will most of these baits be labeled for crappie or Sacalait? Using for crappie or Sacalait as compared to bass, trout, redfish, etc.
Yeah, and if you talk to the guys in most of those places, they'll generally lead you over to a section, panfish section, and you'll see that the baits. You'll have some of the same bass assassin baits and the same colors and styles, but the bags will be a lot smaller and they'll say panfish assassin on them. You'll clearly see that instead of a 5 or 6 inch fluke, we're talking, 1.5 inch, 2 inch fluke.
Okay.
You'll kind of notice the difference when you're looking at the two side by side.
All
And
right.
look, I'm going to put slide 10 on the screen, but that looks like a setup for the slip corks, and I thought maybe you might go into more details on how you rig that.
Yeah, so on slide 10, that's got everything that I use from a slip cork rig. And basically the way that I rig it is there's a bobber stopper that you slide up the line first, and then I'll slide that pear-shaped cork on the left, and then I tie a swivel. That swivel is really important to have because when you're deep dropping like that, if you're fishing in 15 foot of water with a sliding cork, a lot of times you'll get a lot of line twist. And if you don't put that swivel, 20 or 30 minutes later, your line's all tangled up and you're having to go home or respool a whole spool of line just because you're having so many issues with it. So once I tie that swivel, I basically run about a 3-foot leader down to a 1/16 ounce jig head and put any color of choice. I'll put a couple of split shots on there. And the beauty about that rig is when you're fishing areas like Henderson or fishing really deep water in the winter, you can drop it in an area that you're casting a very small rig out, but you're able to set that bobber stopper to 15 feet. Those fish that are hanging out deep in the wintertime, they might be only 3-4 foot off the bottom. So you're fishing in 20 foot of water. You want to set that cork at 17, 16, 15 feet of water and try to find them. So that's a good way to do it without being right on top of them.
Wow. So you're literally fishing with a cork, but you're fishing pretty deep, 15, 16 feet down.
Yeah, and like I said, that's kind of the tactic that most guys use during the wintertime or in areas like Henderson. In Henderson, you really see the separation between the two species where the white crappie are and the black crappie, because the black crappie are going to be closer to the banks, closer to the edges, whereas the white crappie are going to hang real deep on those bridge pilings. And, they'll live most of the year in that 16, 15-foot range.
So we had a good question come through here on Facebook here, and so somebody's asking, say you go out, what would you recommend for somebody that's never Sacalait fished before? They want to go out this weekend. What would be a good beginner setup for somebody to rig to go try? I know we've talked about a bunch of different setups, but what would be the one that you'd recommend for somebody that has not done this before?
For this time of year in February, right now, pre-spawn. Right. Yeah.
Sure. So what I would say is to kind of build some confidence and have some success, you can use a minnow setup and get maybe 10, 15 minnows as insurance, and you can actually troll a minnow rig behind you while you're casting a tube jig and cork up against the bank. And the way that I do that is I take a number 2 Aberdeen hook and I put a split shot above it, and then I'll set a weighted cork about 3 foot deep, and I'll toss that out behind me, let it hang out about 30 yards behind the kayak, and I'll just pretend that it's not even back there while I'm hitting the bank with either a mini spinner or a tube and a cork. And at some point, that minnow is going to go off behind you. And I've caught 20-pound catfish like that. I've caught 2-pound Sacalait like that. And over the years, I've probably caught 8 or 9 bass over 5 pounds on that minnow setup like that. So I think that it helps, get guys a little excited when they're fishing that. I mean, I'm a veteran. I've been doing this for a long time. I still employ that little insurance rig in the back. Sacalait are great eating. So the more I can put in the bag, the happier I am at the end of the day. So I would say, there's really 2 rigs that you could use. One would be that minnow setup, and the other would be just a cast and retrieve method toward the bank while you're waiting for that minnow to get hit. And if you spend a couple of hours out on the water, that minnow rig will definitely get hit.
What size weight are you using for that split shot?
That split shot, like I said, I'll run it about 6 inches above my hook, and it's generally a number 7 split shot.
Okay.
And that brings up a good point. While you're trolling it, if you get a hit on that minnow that you're trolling, is that kind of giving you an indication, hey, the Sacalait could be over there, and you'll go back and hit that area where you got that bite?
Yeah,
or is that less a random thing?
Sometimes it's random, but the other thing that'll help you determine is if, let's say it took an hour for that to get hit, but you haven't had a single hit up against the bank. If that minnow was behind you and he was 15 yards off the bank, well, now you might start thinking, well, maybe these fish aren't quite spawning yet. Maybe they're not all the way up against the bank. Maybe I want to back my kayak off 40 yards off the bank, start casting toward that 15-yard mark where that minnow was sitting. And generally you'll start getting more bites. And that's the whole thing with Sacalait fishing is you have to find a pattern. You have to keep on the move. It's fishing fast initially, covering as much ground as you can. But when you get bit, you slow down and think about, why you got bit in that area and really start trying to hone in on, can I repeat that?
Okay. Tyler, if you could put up slide number 8 real quick. And Devon, what we've got here on slide 8 are the Billy Bob bobbers, and they appear to be, I guess, at least 2 different style of bobbers. Tell me a little bit, what's the difference here with these bobbers that you're using?
The main one that I use during spawning season and pre-spawn is that middle one. So it's weighted, so it gives you it's a little bit easier to cast out there. The problem with your spawning fish and your post-spawn fish is the more it gets drawn out after those females have laid eggs, those males start getting really, really finicky. So at some point you have to kind of drop the weight on that cork, and you can see to the right, I have cork without the weight. And to the left, there's basically a very small whittled down cork that has no weight at all. So what happens is these fish get really finicky. They hit that weighted cork and they'll spit that lure right back out because they know something's not right with it. So you'll kind of have to transition to a smaller, lighter weight cork so that they don't feel it. And it's just one of those things.
They're that sensitive to the bite sometimes.
Say again?
I said they're that sensitive to the bite sometimes that they can tell when they hit a bait if it's got a weighted cork or unweighted cork.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, definitely post-spawn, they'll get, just really, really finicky. And sometimes you might just have to go with a 1/16 ounce jig head and no cork. And, sometimes that's more successful without the cork at all.
Okay. Now, I know, Tyler, if you could put slide 9 back up, what we're dealing with here, Devon, you sent us some pictures of Berkley Powerbait and Berkley Gulp. So they actually make a Gulp type bait for Sacalait fishing.
So that's a pretty recent new addition. And a friend of mine had told me about that bait, and he said, man, you never believe it. He said, we were trying some out those new 2.5-inch smelt minnows. And he said, we sat down for lunch and the corks were just sitting out there, and we started catching Sacalait with them sitting like that. And I said, well, it doesn't surprise me because I've caught fish on Gulp like that, saltwater fishing. And, they have that patented scent to them. And I've tried it trolling them, and you could troll any other plastic without that stop and go pattern, and you can just let it sit there. And they're generally not going to hit it. But for some reason, if that Gulp is just sitting there, that's one of the few baits that will hit that's not live bait.
Huh. Now, what about the Powerbait? Looks like it's little pellets, maybe? Little pellets?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the answer to a synthetic version of grass shrimp, right? Because a lot of these guys, they'll just tip that jig with grass shrimp. But this was a way to say, hey, you don't have to go catch grass shrimp, but here's a little way to put some stink on your jig head and maybe entice a few bites.
Have you used the pellets before?
I have. In the last couple of years, I noticed they're getting a little bit softer. So one of the things I do is I'll kind of set them on my driveway for 20 minutes before I go out. I'll let them tighten up a little bit. It makes them just a little bit more durable. But they do work. If I can't get grass shrimp, that's a close second.
Oh, okay. That's definitely something to try out. So you actually will tip your plastics on your hook with that little pellet.
Yep, you can generally with those little small Southern Pro jig heads, you can generally get 1 or 2 of those little crappie niblets on there.
Okay. So, we've got We've got our rod and reels. We've kind of gone through the tackle now. And I know you were kind enough to provide us with some locations throughout the state. Well, mostly, I guess it's going to be southeast. And Tyler, I think you've got a slide for that. That maybe you could pop up on the screen there for everybody to look at.
We actually just had a question on Facebook asking for a couple good locations to start, so it's a good transition into this.
Okay, what was the question?
It was asking for a couple good locations to start without giving up any secret spots.
Oh, great. And as we promised, Devon, we're not going to ask you for any honey holes, but what you've been really kind enough to do is you sat down and you made a list of some launch spots for people. So this will, basically put you in the area to go catch Sacalait. And so you've got it broken down here: West Pearl River, East Pearl River, Tchefuncte, Bogafalaya, Tickfaw River, Blind River, St. Charles Parish, and the Lake Verret area, Homa, Amelia Lake, Palador area. And so Tyler has the a slide for each of these locations. I think we've got over 15 launches listed here. So all these places that you've got here, these are areas where people can put in, and these are areas known to you to actually hold Sacalait.
Yeah, most of those areas are cypress swamps that have willows mixed in with them, tupelo gums. A lot of those areas have subdivisions that are close to them, or man-made canals. They're all really good areas for Sacalait. That's the general area that you're looking for to kind of pin down and say, these backwaters are going to hold Sacalait this time of the year. And that map that I kind of worked with Tyler to make, it kind of goes all the way from Henderson down to the Sacalait Basin, and then east over to St. Charles, and then back up to Covington. So for guys on the North Shore, there's areas like Tickfaw and Tchefuncte. I included a couple of launches that are really easy. I know several guys that fish the Tchefuncte and do really well there. You'll fish a pretty big stretch without getting a bite, but when they do find them in typical Sacalait fashion, they'll load the boat up with them, and they really enjoy fishing out there. So that's really good for those North Shore guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing locations here. Look like they've got some on the North Shore. They've got some close to Slidell, near Homa, close to New Orleans, Metairie area. So we really appreciate that. If someone were to ask me where to go to catch Sacalait, I wouldn't have a clue. But at least now, we've got locations. As long as you've got a spot, you say, look, I can launch here. And then we can kind of go explore on our own, knowing that the fish are in the area, rather than trying to go, North Louisiana and catch a speckled trout, fishing somewhere up in Shreveport. So this time of year, do you find one particular area better than another, or is this basically February, March, it's on kind of everywhere where Sacalait are found?
No, it's pretty much on everywhere Sacalait are found. Some of the areas I would avoid, if you notice there's a lot of rainfall, would be the Tchefuncte River. When Pearl River is over 10 feet, it's not generally as good. So there's some little small things to be aware of there, but for the most part, regardless of what body of water these fish are in, they're driven by that instinct to get up and spawn. That aggressiveness is there, again, regardless of the body of water.
Okay. So, we've got these launch spots, and, I know kind of what I'm looking for when I'm going red fishing and when I'm going, and fishing for trout. But I'm new to the sport of Sacalait fishing, and I've got a launch. I've got all my equipment. I know where I'm going. So I launch. What am I looking for as far as an area that, I want to fish? Now, I know we control, and that may help us locate some fish. But if I want to, say I want to look for certain structure or certain vegetation, what am I looking for when I'm targeting Sacalait once I've decided where I'm launching?
So like we were talking before, male Sacalait are going to move up into those shallows with hard bottoms and kind of fan that vegetation. One of the things they look for is that hard bottom, but another thing that they look for is cover. So if you have a tree that's fallen in the water that's coming over and it's right up against a hard bank, those are areas where as you're passing, you want to stop and kind of say to yourself, hey, that could be a really good spot.
Okay. What about like tree stumps, things like that, fallen trees? Is that an area that I'd want to fish?
They really stack up in fallen trees in the summertime.
Okay.
Like we were talking about before in the pre-spawn and the spawn, they're really trying to stage pre-spawn out in 8 foot of water, 6 foot of water, and then move up into that 1 foot as the water temps go up. So I would focus less on the trees and more of the pattern of where they are off of the bank and the distance, and focus less on that structure and more on the distance off of the bank right now.
And at this time of year, they're going to be, when they start spawning, they're going to be in the shallower water is where we're going to be looking for them.
As the air temperature and water temperature warms up, yeah.
Okay, and that water temperature we're looking for, I think you said, was 55 to 65 degrees?
That's it.
Okay. All right.
Now, I mean, there are exceptions to the rule. I have caught Sacalait females with eggs end of May in 78 degree water temperature. And sometimes they just don't follow the rules. They're not all textbook, but you try to catch the masses when they do spawn, and that makes for the really good fishing days, but there are outliers.
Okay. I think, Tyler, you wanted to cover some of the areas here we had listed.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of individual slides that kind of list these launches, and I know I'll kind of put them up and just read through them quickly, and then Devon, if there's any particular ones that stand out to you that you might want to comment on, I'll let you do that. So first one I'm putting up here is the Pearl River area. Looks like you have 4 launches there. Honey Island Swamp. This is West Old Pearl River. Honey Island Swamp Tours has a launch. David Landing boat launch. There's a public boat launch there on Highway 90. And then on the East Pearl River, there's East Pearl River boat launch. Let's see. Next we have Chafuncta and Bogafalaya area. There's the Water Street launch in Covington, Louisiana. It's a free public launch. Over at the Blind River and Tickfall area, you have Tickfall public launch on Highway 22 right next to Bupaloo's Bar in Springfield, Louisiana. And then on Blind River, I know St. James Boat Club's a pretty popular spot right off Airline Highway in Gramercy, kind of close to the Gonzales area. And then Black Lake Club Bait and Tackle, which is out in Marpaw.
I've seen a lot of Sacalait caught at that St. James Boat Club right there at that little bridge. It's hit or miss, just like fishing anything else. But I've seen a lot of them caught right there next to the launch.
Okay, and next is St. Charles Parish. So this is over in looks like Devon's home waters. We got the Des Allemands boat launch, which is a free public launch. We have, I might butcher this name, Psalms. Is that how you pronounce it, or?
Somay.
So got the Cajun to it. Somay's Marina. It's a $10 launch in Des Allemands. Pier 90 Marina, West We Go, $5 launch. Bayou Gaucher boat launch. Is that right?
Bayou Gauche.
Of course. Stressed the E there when I shouldn't have did it. That's a free public launch. And then Hanville boat launch on Highway 3127. It's a free public launch. Next up, we have the Lake Verret area. Jack Miller's Landing, Plaquemine, Louisiana. Bay Natchez, which is also may be referred to as the Old White Castle Landing in Pierre Part. Bayside Launch and Tackle, North Lake Verret, and then a Takapaw Landing on East Lake Verret's free public launch. That's also a great place to launch and go catch catfish there along the trees. Let's see, Homa area, Cannon's boat launch and Bob's Bayou Black Marina. Devon, did I read something that Bob's Bayou Black Marina may be closing here in a month or so?
It's possible, but as of right now, they're open and functioning. There's some issues with landowners in the immediate vicinity, and they might cut off access to his canal. But for the the next couple of weeks at minimum, he's up and running, and they're hoping to extend everything. So hopefully this is an issue that gets tied up in courts, and launch is still open for a couple of years.
Okay, and then the last area we have is the Amelia Lake Pelorda area, the Bob Thibodeau Memorial Boat Launch. I think this is a newer launch that might have been built in the last few years. It's a $1 launch fee down towards Morgan City.
That's great. There's a lot of different areas here for our members that are, basically if you're in the North Shore, New Orleans, Metairie, Kenner, Homa, Thibodeau, Slidell, you've got all kind of launches here available that will hold Sacalait, and I'm certainly looking forward to trying it out. I know we've got a busy March coming up, a lot of tournaments coming up. I've got to just figure out a day I can go out and do some Sacalait fishing, because I'm getting pretty excited about it now. I know in one of these slides I just see these slabs everywhere lining. Looks like it's lining your driveway here in slide number 3.
I'll pull it up real quick. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's a whole lot of good eating right there. It looks like.
Is that Devon? Is that a mix of black and white Sacalait? Because some certainly look darker than the other ones.
Yeah, so there's a mix in that particular picture. A few of them are white, but again, most of them are black. But even the black will look different colors depending on the oxygenation of the water that they came out of. The best way to tell is really looking at the pattern of the stripes, not necessarily the color, the lightness of the fish.
Okay. Now I know you and I were talking before we got going tonight, and kayak fishing is becoming very popular. You see it a lot, especially at least in southern Louisiana, mostly in saltwater. Sometimes we get problems from some of the boaters. For the most part, I think they're courteous. They slow down, and they're aware of us out there, especially in places like Leeville, and some of these other places. Golden Meadow, where Delacroix, Hopedale, where kayakers are really prevalent in those areas. But freshwater, it's not. I guess it's prevalent, and I know you've got some stories about you fishing on freshwater, that maybe you could share with us to help everybody, be safe on the water when they're out there fishing, because it is a little bit of a different environment in freshwater as it is compared to fishing on saltwater.
Right. I think for the most part, the inshore saltwater community, the awareness of kayakers has really, really grown in the last couple of years. I mean, there's saltwater tournaments everywhere now. With freshwater, you don't really see that. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was out in a little small, narrow canal, and I had a mud boat with a big 354 Chevy engine come running, right up on top of me. And I had a light, had my life jacket on and everything, but I really thought he was going to swamp me. And we probably could have high-fived as he passed me, and never said a word to me. But I hear him talking to his wife as he nearly runs me over. And in the thickest Cajun accent, I just hear him saying, "Oh, look at that little guy in a little pedal boat. What they gonna think of next?" And so I'm kind of mad at the guy, right, for almost running me over. But at the same time, I'm kind of laughing, and I'm thinking, these guys, they don't really see us very often. Maybe they see a pirogue every now and then for duck hunting season, but then the rest of the year, the awareness just isn't up. So if you're going to go out in some of these smaller canals, backwaters, and bayous, we've got bass boats that do 90 plus miles an hour now. Make sure you're seen. Have a life jacket. If you've got some reflective material that you can put on your kayak, use that, and just be aware of your surroundings. Know that the awareness isn't up in some of these areas. Look out for yourself. Safety first.
Okay, great. We appreciate that. It's one thing we constantly preach in the club. It seems like at least once a month there's an article coming out, someone who wasn't wearing a life jacket, sometimes in kayaks, sometimes in boats, and someone drowning when it was really completely unnecessary. So, certainly those are good tips to follow. Now, just to get back to Sacalait a little bit, we talked a little bit about cooking, filleting versus frying. You've got a picture in here, and Tyler, if you could pull it up, it's slide number 6 there. Tell us what we're looking at. I see a Sacalait with the head cut off and a bunch of yellow gunk in your hand.
Yeah, that yellow gunk is the roe, and that's what all this business is about with the spawn. They're laying those eggs, and that's a poor man's oyster right there. You cut that baby open and put a little cornmeal on it, fry it up, and it tastes a lot similar to an oyster. That's good stuff right there.
Yeah, Devon completely talked me out of trying that after seeing that picture. I think if he'd have posted a picture of it already battered and fried, I would have thought about it, but I'm not sure.
And Devon, so you said you actually cut open the roe sack and it doesn't like spill out everywhere.
No, it doesn't. I mean, you would think it would, but it actually holds together really well. And you're just putting a split in that so that it doesn't pop when you stick it in the fryer.
That's good. And so I take it can't take long to cook, though, huh? 30 seconds a minute?
Yeah, I mean, you drop it in, it starts floating 30, 45 seconds later, and it's done.
All right. Well, Tyler, it sounds like when we go out and catch our Sacalait, that'll be the first one you have to try out for sure.
Yeah, I'll keep the fish and give you the roe.
Yeah. Devon, so what is a good size Sacalait? Like if I'm out and I said, man, that is a trophy Sacalait right there, what would I know that to be?
I think trophy, you'd have to, just like, we talk about trout in Grand Isle versus Big Lake versus Texas. You have to look at the area. You go to a place like Toledo Bend and Poverty Point, a 3-pound Sacalait is a good Sacalait. A 2.5-pound Sacalait is a good Sacalait. I think down here in the St. Charles Parish area, 2 pounds is a very respectable Sacalait. Anytime you get over that 13 and a half inch mark, you'll know when you pull it up, it's a sizable fish.
Absolutely. Tyler, do we have any other questions from anyone viewing tonight?
I think we've about covered all of them that I've seen.
Yeah, I know we're coming up on an hour here, and I know Devon's got a wife that's expecting here shortly, and I'm sure he's wanting to get back with her and his kids. Devon, is there anything else you want to add to our discussion tonight? Anything we may have missed? Any other helpful suggestions you can provide us?
No, if anybody has any further questions, if anybody's interested in me posting some pictures of that sliding cork rig, you can send me a message on Bayou Coast or my email. It's my first and last name, devonbeltz@gmail.com. But I think that about covers the basics for the spawn.
Yeah, we may follow up this and post these slides with the launches. Maybe it'd be a little easier for y'all to see them. We didn't have them up on the screen very long, but
absolutely. Maybe Tyler, when we post it on the Facebook, when we repost the broadcast on the Facebook, we can post some pictures underneath showing some of the different slides, some of the setups there for people, because I know that's something that I'm going to want to definitely go back to and refer and probably save some of those pictures. So when I go to Puglia's or Academy or wherever I'm going, Cabela's, I can bring it up and say, okay, this is what Devon fishes with. I'm going to find it down the aisle here.
Well, we just have one more question. Somebody says, when you fry them whole, do you eat the bones and fins?
So no to eating the bones, but absolutely to eating the fins. It's like the best potato chip you've ever had. And that's why people fry them whole. Gives a little bit extra flavor from the bones, but also everybody likes that potato chip. And Sacalait have a very, very large tail segment, dorsal fin, as well as that anal fin. It's a lot bigger than largemouth bass and some of the other brown.
So do you eat the tail?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So everything but the bones.
Everything but the bones and the head.
And the guts, obviously. So basically, you cut off the head, slit it open down the middle, rip out the guts, clean it out, and scale it, and it's good to go.
You got it.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna try this. I'm going to go catch me one this weekend, I think, and I'm going to try it. I'm going to catch one, I think, and I'll try it. So Devon, look, man, we really appreciate you coming on tonight, spending some time with us. I know that aside from Sacalait, you do a lot of other fishing, and I hear really good things about your speckled trout fishing. Some people tell me that Leeville is your area, so maybe we'll have you on again for Paddlepalooza, and you could just tell us a little bit, maybe give some people some hints about fishing Leeville. Not any hunting holes, but maybe just
won Minimalist Challenge twice, so that must tell you something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you say Leesville? Was that with an S? Leesville?
Leeville.
Oh, I never heard of that place. I don't know.
So, guys, look, I want to give a special thanks to Trisha Lewis. I think we forgot to thank her last time. Trisha is Todd's wife, his better half, obviously. She came up with our awesome logo with the trout, the redfish, and the flounder. I call the trout Mr. Speckles. But she did that herself. And take a look at the pizza. It's got some neat little baits on there. I'm sure some of them might even be Sacalait baits. As a reminder, if you missed part of tonight's episode, you can check it out on YouTube. It'll probably be available tomorrow. It'll also be on Facebook. And again, it'll be available on as a podcast on Apple and Google. Again, Devon, thanks for coming on tonight. We look forward to having you back soon.
Thanks, Devon. I know I sure learned a lot.
Absolutely, I did too. Looks like I'm gonna have to go buy another 6-7 tackles of bait there and give me some new ultralight spinning rods.
New addiction. There you go.
Look, I know Puglia's and Cabela's and Bass made you made a lot of people happy tonight. So good night, tight lines, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much.